Today's COVID update is brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price but stay for the service.
And we are back, and we are jumping right into our first conversation, and we are going to be getting an update in relation to this ongoing situation between the government and Belize, the Public Service Union, and the BNTU. And joining us for this conversation are Dean Flowers, who is the first Vice President and the Public Relations Officer of the Public Service Union. And we are also joined by Senator Elena Smith, who is the President of the Belize National Belize National Teachers Union, I'm sorry. Good morning, and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, and thanks for having us.
Good morning, thank you for having us.
All right, so perhaps we can start at the beginning, just for the benefit of some of our viewers. We can start by discussing at least where we started. We know the position is that the government has asked or is requesting that the members of the unions waive or defer their increments, and that in the first instance that position was not accepted by the unions, and that a meeting was requested with the financial secretary prior to any confirmation of what the unions would accept. Where are we now in terms of the negotiations with the government?
Well,
Dean, or anybody can take that one.
Okay, so from our end, if I may,
Yes.
thanks again for having us. This matter started out when there was a request, as you said, for us to forgo an increment. Started some discussions, and then we ended up with a meeting with the FinSec, all three unions combined. We had a meeting with the FinSec, and we discussed the issues that they had presented or their proposal. At that meeting, the unions made a counter proposal, and we also made some requests. For example, one of the requests that we made was that if it is that the government was insisting that we forgo the increment, and then at the time of retirement, it would be included in our calculations, then the union wanted to ensure that we were part of a committee, and that committee would then look at a formula for calculating that amount at the time of retirement. Mm-hmm. The unions also proposed or counter-proposed that instead of having it at the time of retirement, that it could be given at maybe 3 to 5 years after, because we thought that maybe by that time that the country would have been able to bounce back a bit and would have been able to afford. We also requested that a committee be formed where we as unions could be on that committee, and we would be looking at cost-saving measures going forward, medium and long-term cost-saving measures that the government could then implement to help it, in being able to have funds, especially reserves and other funds that we don't have to get to this point should we have another pandemic or a disaster. We also agreed that the FinSec and his team would then have to take those suggestions or proposals that we made to them, would have to take them back to their principals, which would have been the Prime Minister and Cabinet, for approval, after which he would then get back to us with the results of his tabling those to Cabinet. Mm-hmm. After getting back to us with the responses from the government side, then we would then, I guess, offer our views on that, or acceptance or not, and then we go from there. And we had also asked whether it is that whatever is agreed, if those would be put in writing at the end of the discussions, and then we would sign off on those. And the FinSec had said, and we have it in writing, that yes, those would be put in writing, and we will be able to sign off on those. Mm-hmm. So that was, in summary, how the process went.
Yeah. And
with unions.
So let's just, because there's been quite a bit of conversation about this over the past few weeks, but one of the things I wanted to bring to the forefront was really talking about how long the unions have been requesting some of the very same information that you're requesting right now. I can recall when collectively through the NTUCB, there was a request to look at a full list of the workers, including the open vote workers, getting some of the breakdown as to who's receiving how much, so that you could be able to have a better picture as to how this very large public wage bill that we talk about is actually being spent. I mean, by your estimation, Elena, how long have the unions been asking for this?
I would think certainly over 12 years.
And you've never received any indication that you get this information?
Well, it has always been, and Brother Dean can speak on behalf of the PS, who said it has always been that, it will take some time to gather that information. It's difficult to determine how many open voters, how many contract officers, because, things change. So, all of these excuses that we've been getting in terms of the government being able to provide the information to the union so that we could, make informed decisions, and that we could then offer them some suggestions as to, what are the things that the government can do to assist in this area.
But break this down for us. Why is this list important in being able to look at cost-saving measures?
I'll let Brother Dean chime in.
Okay.
Good morning once again, and good morning, Belize. The list is important because it forms one of the proposal that we are putting forward to the Financial Secretary. We're saying that for years, as you rightly mentioned, we know that we have a wage bill that has ballooned tremendously out of control. There is the uncertainty that everyone that is on that pay list is even working with the government. And so there are stories of government having a phantom on a ghost payroll. And so we're saying we must receive that list, and collectively, together with HRMIS, who is responsible for payments, along with the Ministry of Finance, we need to do a proper audit of that list to ascertain that everyone that is listed on that list is actually employed with the government, actually has a desk, actually has an office, and is actually a physical person. The reality is that the public service, the Ministry of Public Service, has done such a terrible job over the years, such a poor job over the years at managing the human resource aspect, both from an employment standpoint, from a recruiting standpoint, to a management standpoint. And so I can tell you for a fact that the Ministry of Public Service wouldn't be able to accurately answer that question in terms of how many public officers do we really have in the system, and whether or not all of them are deserving of perhaps the salary that is being remitted to them via HRMIS. So there is no getting away from that. We're sticking to a position that we must look at that list. We must do there's also a call for this audit, that we look at what people are doing to ascertain if they're really needed, and if they're not needed where they are, then for us to accommodate them within the system. So as a union, we definitely will not be advocating for the firing of any public officer, but we want to ensure that the general public, that the Belizean public, is getting value for money. And so it's important that we look at that one aspect, and that is only one aspect of our proposal that we put forward to the Ministry of Finance.
Yeah. There are several points, but let me just go back to something you said. You spoke of different scenarios as to why you want clarity as to the full list of voters that fall under this collective wage bill that we talk about all the time. And you said there may be scenarios where, if there are even bodies in that place. What do you mean by that? And do you have proof to say that this is something that actually takes place?
Well, we know that we have a wage bill that has ballooned out of control. We don't have that list. We've been requesting that list. The only way we'd be able to ascertain whether or not the wage bill is a true representation of the amount of bodies in the system is if we do a review and an audit of it. So I wouldn't be able to sit here and tell you we have proof that Marlene Cuellar is on the list and she's not a public officer. We have because they refuse to provide us the list. What the FinTech has attempted to do is to provide us with a head count, but it was not. But neither was it disaggregated by ministry, by department, by units. So if it's disaggregated by department, by ministries, by units, we can still perhaps engage in a mini exercise to ascertain that okay, well, in XYZ or in the income tax department, they're saying there's 242 individuals. Let's look at across the country and ensure that we get that head count. So we're unable to even do that. What's the big secret? I don't know. And so one has to be a bit skeptical about whether or not government is paying phantom or ghost workers.
Well, can I then, I'll ask that if it's what you're suggesting then is that if this list is revealed or if this audit is done or if in any way this information that you're requesting is revealed, that it would show that perhaps there are expenditures by the government that should be cut and that needs to be addressed as a priority as opposed to the cuts to whatever increments or whatever they are proposing in relation to the unions. Is it that what you are suggesting? That there may be wastage or expenditure that we're not looking at right now?
Well, as I said before, that is only one area in which we would be able to realize savings going forward. Because that exercise would, I can tell you, would reveal a lot of irregularities where employment is concerned and where payment of quote-unquote government employees are concerned. It's an exercise that's long overdue. And so in tandem with perhaps looking at each employee in the government service in terms of what they do, we would be able to eliminate waste where there exists. I can tell you as we speak, to the best of my knowledge, I have not seen the Ministry of Housing build a single house over the last 10 years. Yet we're paying a CEO in the Ministry of Housing and a full complement of staff. And I will ask the question, to do what? The Ministry of Human Development has taken over most of the roles and responsibilities that were previously being executed by the Ministry of Housing. So as far as I'm concerned, we can save ourselves immediately $100,000 by sending home the CEO in the Ministry of Housing because he has absolutely nothing to do, and that's a fact. And the entire ministry needs to be realigned with perhaps or amalgamated with the Ministry of Human Development so that we can get value for money for where there is wastage in the system. This is something, as I stated, the Ministry of Finance doesn't want to touch, and clearly and factually and honestly speaking, it is our view that the Ministry of Public Service is clueless as to how it should be done. And so we're at this crossroad now. We're in economic shambles. We need to do better in how we manage government finances. And we're saying we have several proposals. This is one, and I am really hoping that the government, the financial secretary, is serious about helping the people of Belize, because this is not about the government or an opposition, it's about the people of Belize. And if they're honest in their undertaking, and if they're honest, and if they love their country, they will yield to the request that we're asking for us to fix the finances of this country and to discipline ourselves where spending is concerned, which, as we know it as we speak, is not being monitored and is basically reckless.
So this particular time, right now, the conversation seems to be diluted to one point, which is as communicated by the Prime Minister, that in my own words, you're being stubborn. You, the unions, you don't want to give up your increment while everyone else is taking a pinch and there's unemployment. But what I'm hearing from you and what I wanted to be able to expand upon in this interview is that there is a much larger list of items that you have requested. And it's not, in fact, that you don't want to give up your increment. You want to have it deferred. Explain to me what you mean by that, because I'll be honest with you right now. For everyone else who's taking a salary cut or have lost their job, they're just thinking, how unfair of you as the unions to not want to give up your cut as well when everybody else is taking a pinch.
Well, first and foremost, I do not share the view that everyone is taking a view, and we can get into that conversation as to why I hold that view, including individuals in government. And I can tell you off the top, I'm yet to hear the Prime Minister speak about the foreign service officers who are living lavish lives across this world. I don't know what's the value they're adding to the kind of service we're delivering. I haven't heard him talk about them. I haven't heard him speak about the meager, in my view, with all due respect to every single HOD out there. I mean, when you send a proposal that heads of department will be giving up 25% of their entertainment allowance. So we're saying you ought to give up 100% of your allowance because it is not serving the purpose for which it was intended. And the FinSec has taken the decision that they'll only give up 25%, which is basically $187, if my math is right. 25% of $750. Totally unacceptable. These are the people who sit at the highest end of the pay scale, and in some cases, beyond what the pay scale requires, as we already know of a certain director who, rather than sitting on 25, sits on 27. This is a perfect opportunity for the financial secretary to say to her, because of the cost-saving measures that we're trying to achieve, we will now realign you with your other brothers and sisters in APSSM to be at cost savings at P scale 25, sorry. As you can see, I'm getting a bit, in using the Prime Minister's term, exercised when I speak of these things, because the reality is that what the Prime Minister avoided and deliberately avoided is to speak about the cost-saving measures and speak about an increment, which clearly he also got wrong, and terribly wrong, where the total value of contribution that public officers will be making is concerned, versus HODs who I just said are simply tasked to give up 25% of their entertainment allowance. And I can tell you, as the Prime Minister rightly said, most HODs, again, if this is not the case, then I challenge the FinSec to provide us with those numbers on Wednesday. But the Prime Minister already alluded to it. Most HODs are at the end of their pay scale, so they are not giving up an increment. They're giving up $187. That's it. It's unacceptable. What is our foreign affairs service officers giving up? What is the private sector giving up? The private sector, as we know it, did not fulfill 52% of their obligation in tax payments. There is no reason why the private sector, who enjoys these tax holidays, these tax exemptions, these tax breaks, only paid 48% of what was collected in 2019. Is it that all these businesses closed down? Why is it that we borrowed $14 million to amalgamate the Belize Tax Services Department, and they had a shortfall of 52% of tax revenue between April 2020 and April 2019? It is clearly saying that we're not getting value for money while paying people more than they deserve to be paid. So the Prime Minister did an excellent job. I do not know who all swallowed the pill in trying to pay the public servants, the public servants in a negative light. But we're here to clarify that. We've been clarifying that, and we've been showing the numbers that public servants would be giving up, in some cases, 3 and 4 times more than any cabinet minister would be giving up.
Marlene,
yes,
if I can just add to something that Brother Dean just said, because he spoke about the $187, and so I am trusting that they have punched those numbers. But let's look at that for a minute. So, for example, a teacher who is on pay scale 16, that would be a teacher who would have probably a master's degree, a bachelor's or a master's with a number of years experience. That teacher on pay scale 16 who doesn't get any monthly as a part of his or her increment. That is only $78 less than a person who gets entertainment allowance, phone, housing, whatever other else allowance that they get. So when you're saying to me that what we are being asked to give up is just a measly amount, I mean, if you are giving up $109 per month and you don't have any other allowance to fall back on, that's a huge amount coming out of your salary. In addition to the fact that a lot of our teachers and maybe even public service employees are persons who are single parents, one, but two, in this situation right now, a lot of these persons have spouses who have lost their jobs. And so these persons are now the sole breadwinner for the home. Yet these persons are going to be giving up $109 per month. So it doesn't compare. When you look at the numbers, it really doesn't compare.
Well, and I agree with your point. I think what has been missing from the conversation so far is the scale as to, or even if you want to say the percentage of what the loss would be for a teacher or for an immigration officer who faced people all the way into March coming into the country, what they would lose versus what we are hearing is a cut in entertainment allowance or phone allowances. Yes, the monetary value in today's, if you look at it, may look like more, but what's the impact that it makes? But what I didn't get an answer to, and I want to be very clear about this, are you saying that you are not going to take a cut at this time? Is that a firm decision?
I don't think that we have said that we are not willing to make any sacrifice. We want to make that very clear. We have, and I'm talking from our end as well, BNTU has never said that we are not willing to sacrifice anything at all. And as I pointed out earlier, I was only pointing out to show you the difference between the numbers. What we are saying, or what we have been saying, is that we are willing to sacrifice as well. But in sacrificing, our sacrifice has to mean something. It can't be that we are sacrificing and then the government continues to behave the same way it has been behaving all along. There has to be some change. So our sacrifice that we are willing to make has to be worth something, has to produce something that will be beneficial to this country. And that is the point that people are missing. This is not solely about giving up or deferring an increment. This is about the impact that is going to have, and how can we impact now our governance, our accountability going forward. That is the bigger picture.
Dean?
Yeah, and I want to echo that sentiment, Marlene, and I want to make it categorically clear that the Public Service Union at no point in time indicated that we were not making a sacrifice and that we were not prepared to give up an increment. We never held that position. We do not hold that position. What we're saying is, from an equity standpoint, public officers would be contributing much more than ministers, CEOs, and HODs from an equity standpoint. We cannot accept that. Also, if it is that we're going to make a sacrifice, because we need to make a sacrifice, then this is the perfect opportunity for us to address wastage in the system. And finally, we're saying we don't believe, or we believe that if we address the cost saving measures that we're putting forward, that we won't be in this terrible financial position for an extended period of time. We don't know how long it will take for the economy to recover. We don't know how long it will take for government fiscal position where GDP growth is concerned, how long it will take for that to improve. So we're saying we're prepared to do that deferment now, and because of the discipline and the assistance that we will be giving government to ensure that we close all these loopholes where waste and irresponsible spending is taking place, once we rebound, we would like for you to provide that increment to us free of interest, free of retro pay. We don't even want
You don't want back pay.
We don't want back pay, we don't want interest, we don't want anything. All we're asking for is for the increment to be given at the point in time, whenever that is. We're proposing 3 to 5 years.
So let me
5 years.
Let me see if I'm understanding what your counter proposal is. The financial secretary communicated to you that they want you to forego, never get the increment for this financial year, 2020-2021, erased, no longer applicable. What your counter proposal is that you would want it deferred in 3 to 5 years. You would want then that increment to be added on to the salary of the PSU, of the public service, including the teachers, when things have recovered somewhat.
Yes, that is exactly what we're saying. And just in fairness to the financial secretary, he did send an addendum to his circular number 5, which was speaking about a foregone increment, and he said that they would be prepared to pay the increment at the public officer's point of retirement. So they're saying at your point of retirement, we're prepared to give you back that increment. But the problem with that, Marlene, is that there is no guarantee that any one of us has plans to be in the system until the point of retirement. So we'll be suffering that loss for as long as we're in the system, and once we leave the system before retirement, then we lose that, right? And so we have to put in place some mechanism that will allow for those people who leave the system prior to reaching retirement that they get that increment. Because as I said, once you give up that increment this year, that's a shortfall that you carry with you up until the point you exit the system. And so I can tell you for a fact that a junior public officer who is on pay scale 3 in 5 years' time would have sacrificed almost $5,000, which is well in excess of what the minister would be contributing, and probably 5,000 times what the HOD, the one-time contribution that the HOD would be contributing, an HOD that is on pay scale 25. This is what the Prime Minister failed to inform the general public, and I think it was disingenuous the way how he painted us as being tiny and measly. It's disrespectful to your workforce. We ought to be partners in the provision of service and the administration of this country. And if your employer wants to threaten you in those blunt manner, in those autocratic manner, and then turn around and tell the nation that they're tiny and measly, it shows the level of respect that the Prime Minister has for public officers and the work that we do daily, which includes our frontliners who are currently taking a beating when it comes to work hours. It includes our firefighters who I understand had to work their butts off over the last 2 or 3 weeks extinguishing fire, putting themselves at risk and not being paid adequately and properly the kind of overtime that they deserve. It involves our nurses who risked their lives during this recent outbreak and were promised an augmenting package which to date we have not received a response from the Ministry of Finance in terms of when will assistance be given to them. Bearing in mind that the Public Service Union has been saying for donkey years that our nurses are being disrespected, they're being mistreated, our health workers are being neglected, and they're being exposed to illnesses and horrible working conditions. So COVID-19 is simply highlighting the terrible job that we've been doing as a people in managing the public service. And this is no fault of the union. This is no fault of the union.
Marlene, if just to add to what Brother Dean said, from the onset, when we had the first correspondence from the FinSec, that correspondence included the point that the foregone increment, their words that I'm using, that the foregone increment would be included in our calculations at the time of retirement. So this is not something that came to us after the fact. This is something that from the beginning, that is how it was framed. We are asking you to forego and it will be included. The only difference is that when the circular was sent out, the circular did not include that portion that said that it would have been included in our calculations. And so I wrote to him and I said that wasn't included in there, and so they did the addendum. And also they did not include the fact that we agreed that we would have a committee. That too was included in the addendum. But even after that, BNTU wrote to the FinSec and we explained to him, just as what Brother Dean said earlier, that for us, for example, there are going to be persons who, for reasons of your license expiring, that those persons would have to leave the profession. And in leaving the profession, you would then be entitled to your benefits. So if, for example, a teacher at the age of 25, 35 years has to leave because that person's license expired, does he or she have to wait until 55 to see that calculation? No, because when that teacher leaves, that teacher is able to get his or her gratuity at that point in time. And then if you qualify for a pension, that comes at the time of the age of 55. So we're saying to the FinSec, listen, we want to make a change to the statement to ensure that it doesn't say at the time of retirement, but that it says at the time the person qualifies for benefits. So that's exactly what Brother Dean said earlier. If anybody has to leave for whatever reason, sickness, anything, that person would not lose anything, but that person can see the calculations at that time in their benefits.
So that's one change you're willing to shift from. Instead of the 3 to 5 year deferral, if you get the confirmation from the FinSec that you would receive the increment at whatever point you leave the service, that would be something you would be amenable to.
Well, we were just responding to what they've sent to us.
Yeah.
Because we've still not said to them, okay, we are willing to accept that. Yeah. But we are ensuring that if it is that is what is going to be the decision, then it has to be that it is worded in a way that is acceptable to us, and it's not going to have any of our members lose out at any point in time. So for that reason, we have to ensure that all of the proposals, that they are properly worded and that they meet what it is that we believe our members deserve.
So let's go back to the other list of requests that you've made to the financial secretary. And by my estimation, or well, from what I have seen so far, the letter that was sent back to the PSU, nothing else was addressed except for the fact that they are expecting that you'll accept this proposal, or they may go ahead and change the regulations itself. But you also asked for the disaggregated data on the estimated savings that they're expecting to make. It's $17 million that they're saying they're going to save by withholding increments for 1 year and the cost-saving measures that they're implementing as well.
Yes, that's their target, or at least that's what the FinSec said they would be realizing.
So you don't know how much of that 17 million is from the increments from the public service, or from the, the trimming of the entertainment allowance from the others?
If it is that we knew, you would have known, Marlene, since you have the letters there. Now, so again, it goes to show that the FinSec isn't prepared to have an open, honest dialogue with the PSU whereby we look at the numbers. Let's not forget that public officers are the one who are employed to administrate the system. So we're saying if we see the numbers from SEC, and if you explain to us what you're trying to achieve, we will be able to assist you. We're not here to fight with you. We will never forget our role and responsibilities, which is to always be a partner with you in governing this country. Please allow us to see the books. Let us see what kind of savings you want to realize. If it is that you're targeting $17 million, once we get a disaggregation of that 17 million, we will be able to immediately point you to other areas that you may not be able to, that you may not have to touch public officers or HODs or COs for that matter. Because along with your staff, along with our representatives, in 2014, we spent 2 years putting together a cost-saving measures and cost-saving proposals for you. You took that and either you shredded it or you placed it on a shelf. We met with you to address the issue of our increments at that time. So we brought that back on the table with the Prime Minister in 2016. And we said, when will we address the report that has been sitting on your desk or shelf, or I don't know what exactly they did with it. The Prime Minister recomposed another committee chaired by Mr. Garrett Maria from APSSM. They had some excellent personnel from the Ministry of Finance on the official side, and the unions, both BNTU and PSU. Another cost savings report with solid proposals were put forward at the end of 2018 or the beginning of 2019, which speaks to vehicles, which speaks to rental, which speaks to the selection and recruitment manual, which seems to have, which the Ministry of Public Service seems to have thrown through the window as well, and have now contracted a private or a public political figure to now do the recruiting for them. That report is comprehensive, and that report, I can tell you off the top, if we look at that report, we can save well in excess of $30 million alone when it comes to vehicles and the manner in which the recommendations were made. And so the FinSec, the Ministry of Finance, the government is not serious about cost-saving measures. And clearly the agenda is to paint us in a negative light. I am hoping and praying that the Belizean public are checking their change and not paying any attention to the noise that is being made out there. And that they must understand that the PSU, as a responsible union, is putting forward the truth, and we're hoping that the public will understand that, and the public will ensure that they pressure their representatives to yield to the suggestions being made by the Public Service Union. We are hoping for an amicable dialogue on Wednesday with the Prime Minister. I keep saying that the Prime Minister has the executive power to do as he pleases, and if he believes that despite our best effort, despite our honest effort, and despite the humility that we're displaying in this matter, where this matter is concerned, he wants to act in an autocratic fashion. I keep saying he has that authority, and he should judge him for that.
Well, before we talk about that meeting even more, we haven't discussed as yet what the government is proposing that they will cut on, and so we'll actually tackle that after this break. So we'll take a quick pause, and when we come back, we'll be assessing what is being proposed from the government side as to how they are going to be cutting costs. So please stay tuned.